So this is the second recording of boxes. I said there was only gonna be one, but I didn't like my first recording, so here's the second one. Just to let you guys know, all the verses are our New International Version and IV, and I've simplified all the stories I'm gonna tell. I'm gonna tell three. I extremely simplified them. I'm gonna say things that you aren't gonna see in my presentation as verses. That's just to make it easier for myself. I kind of threw this together in like a week. Um, so first question. Well, what are boxes? I like to see them as locations where I would see a box as like your home, your school, your church, the library, your friend's house, grandma's house, grandpa's house, whatever. That is how I like to visualize a box because it's easier for me. But in the context of these stories, the boxes is what is happening to them that is out of their control. What is happening to our characters that we don't get to decide. And before I get into this, I'm going to say or simplify it to there's two types of boxes. There's your happy boxes. You can visualize this box as having pillows, blankets, a TV, your favorite book, your favorite board game, things that make you happy. Visualize that as a good box. And for a bad box, I would visualize it as a box of nails. That's just easier for storytelling, but you can just think of this like thumbtacks on the ground, things that hurt, um, maybe just bad things that you don't like. You can visualize that as what's inside these bad boxes. So, time to get into our characters or our stories from the Bible, of course. So first is Ruth. Not Ruth is one of the rarer stories to see. It's still there. It's more talked to than many others, but Ruth doesn't get much attention. But she felt perfect for this, which is why I put her first. So how the story of Ruth works is she marries this lady Naomi's son. Naomi stays for the rest of the story, but sadly her son does not, as Naomi's both of her sons die. And the one that Ruth married again is dead. So now, what Naomi says is basically go find a new husband. That is basically what she says is, hey, my son's dead. You can leave me. Even though Naomi will probably die if this happens. You can leave me. Go into the city. Go find a new husband. Like, make your life better. And in simplicity, what Ruth says is, no, I'm not going to. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. That is what Ruth says. Quote, just word for word. So she's telling Ruth, Naomi, no, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to leave this situation. I'm going to have solidarity with you. So how does she do this? Well, how to live for her is she needs food. And where does she get food other than in the fields of this man, Boaz? Boaz, we'll continue talking about. But basically what she's doing here is Boaz owns a lot of land. And he owns fields, and he has a bunch of farmers. So as the people are working his fields, she just picks up what is left behind. And from my memory, there would be other people doing this. This is not just Naomi. Naomi isn't a special princess who gets what she wants and she wants to do this. No. This is that what many people do is after the other workers have after they've picked up all the stuff they're picking up and all the other scraps that are left down, that's what she gets. So, not great, but enough to live, right? And that's what matters, is as long as she can live, she's going to continue doing whatever it is. I don't know, sorry. That was a bad moment. So, one day, Ruth basically says, hey, Boaz is having this festival. He's one of our relatives. You should go see him. Because what Naomi is thinking is that Ruth should marry Boaz. Because how the culture works, at least from what I read and what I understood, is someone in if there's no one in the family that can take care of you, you need to find a new one, which means someone needs to take care of Ruth. In simplicity, there's someone in the family that needs to take care of Ruth. And Naomi thinks, hey, it could be Boaz. So Ruth goes up to Boaz, gets on that riz, right? And basically Boaz is thinking about it, but he's not first in line. He is not the person that gets to say, yeah, I'm taking care of her. There's someone else in line. I forget their name. If you read through the book, you'll find out who it is. And through a turn of events, basically the other guy says, no, I'm not taking care of her. So Boaz does. And dang. Boaz takes Ruth as his wife, and that's basically where we get happily ever after. I'm pretty sure Ruth was the one that is like in line to either at least David or maybe even Jesus himself. So yeah, Ruth, because she trusted in God, trusted in his power to like make it better, she gets a lot of future benefits that maybe even though she won't get to see them, other people did. I guess our ancestors got to see the fruits of Ruth's labor and God's labor. So the next person is Esther. So this is one of the more talked about stories that you see a lot more. Is people will you probably know the story of Esther, but I'm gonna say it anyways. So basically, from what I'm covering, the king's wife at the time is killed, and killed by who? But the king himself. Basically, she disobeys what he says. All the advisors say, you gotta kill her, or else all the other wives in the entire kingdom are gonna fight against us as well. So we're gonna have a terrible thing that's happening where all the wives are gonna disobey. Not great logic. Whether or not it's true or not, or even if it's a good or bad thing, I'm not sure. But that's just the situation. But now King's sad because he just killed his wife, and he thought his wife was pretty dang hot. And he wants a new hottie. So he gets, what does he do except for get all the not all of them, but get all the prettiest girls from around the nation, and basically puts them through a care routine, basically making them as hard as possible over the next few months. So Naomi does this. Not Naomi. I don't know why I said Naomi. Sorry, Esther does this. Esther goes, and through this process, or not through the process, but during the process, she finds out from Mordecai, her stepdad, basically, or I think uncle. I don't fully remember. Basically that there's this guy Haman. He's second in the country at this point, and because he doesn't like Mordecai, he's not just gonna bother Mordecai. He's gonna try to basically kill all the Jews in the entire nation. Not great. Not a great situation. We're not having fun here if we're Jewish. Of course, he doesn't know that Esther is Jewish, and doesn't know that he's basically would be killing the king's queen, his wife, the king's wife. So, well, sorry, I didn't say this throughout the story, but yeah, Esther becomes queen. Esther wins the contest for, and is picked by the king. So what she does to try to get out of this is she invites Haman and the king to dinner. Over a few days, she invites them to banquets, to just gain the king's graces, make Haman complacent. And during this, basically what happens is she snitches on Haman. It basically says, hey, yo, king, Haman is trying to kill me and all my people. King doesn't know about this. Does not know that she's Jewish, or at least doesn't know about the order. And it was just like, yo, Haman, can't do this. Gotta kill you. So they kill Haman. On the gallows that they were gonna. Gallows is basically just a pointy stick. So he gets impaled on what he was gonna use to kill Mordecai. So funny. That's how that happens. Is basically he gets killed. And then what happens next is that the king can't exactly just revert a law that he was gonna just say yes to, because he didn't really look through the law that Haman was gonna place to basically kill all the Jews. But what he can do is he can allow the Jews to defend themselves. So basically, if you're gonna go and try to kill a Jewish person here because you're allowed to, they can kill you back, and that basically stopped it. I don't think there was records on how many were actually killed, but they basically, what it said is that all of them they got through it and everything worked out. So yeah, that is the story of Esther. Is she goes in, sucky situation, kind of just being taken away, all of her people are going to be killed, and she gets through it. What's next is Daniel. This one is probably the one that most of you guys will know. is that Israelites are taken into Babylon, and Daniel is one of them. They take the most like the royalty, and they're gonna train them to become the chief officials. They're gonna become just nobility in the new kingdom, or at least not nobility, but they're gonna become the next like a line of advisors and other people that are working in the kingdom. And Daniel is one of these people. So what happens is through this training process, they're given what is the best food, because you want to train them, and they want not just mental tests but physical tests. But this food is taken straight from the king's table. But the food taken from the king's table was also dedicated to gods that were not the one true real God. So Daniel just says, "I can't eat this, man. I can't. It's bad food. I can't do this. Just give me steamed vegetables and water." And you know what? If I do better than everyone else on the tests because of this, then just keep doing it, giving it that food to me. And the guy's like, "Sure, I guess. I don't know why you would want vegetables over this great meat." So, anyways, as most of you guys will know, that's what happens. Is he does better, and then we're gonna do a bit of a time jump because I don't know. I was terrible at making this presentation. Is basically, as time passes and over certain things that happen, Daniel becomes one of the highest trusted advisors to the king. Is God has made him prosper through being faithful, not eating this bad food, doing other works in the kingdom. He has now become an advisor. But the king makes a new law that basically at a certain time in the day, you have to start worshiping him. And as we've seen, Daniel only worships one God. And he's not going to worship the king. And basically, what happens is that people find out that, hey, yo, Daniel, this guy that's super high up, he's not worshiping the king. He can't be breaking laws like this. So they snitch on him to the king, and the king finds out, and he's like, hey, yo, can you please just fake it? And Daniel's like, nah, can't fake it. I can't even fake worship you. I will only truly worship God. That is the only thing I will do. And basically, now king, throughout the order, has to kill him. And the way that that's going to happen, or was going to happen, is by being put into a lion's den. Is basically he's gonna be put in a hole of a bunch of hungry lions, and he's just gonna get ripped to shreds. Except for those who know, that doesn't happen. God saves him, quiets the lions, and then once Daniel comes out, the king puts the people who snitched into the pit because the king actually likes Daniel. So at this point, I believe Daniel is like basically second in command of the entire nation, just because that's how it worked. And one thing that I'll mention to you guys is that throughout this entire process, sorry, I had to put the verse up and then it lost my train of thought. As God, sorry, dang. Rewind. Throughout this entire process of him becoming king and over the year, basically the time skip, he does a lot of doing just dreams. He translates a lot of dreams for the king. And there's some other things that happen with his friends that I'm not going to cover, but he does a lot of dream translation. So that's also why he was put so high up, is the king is having dreams. Daniel basically says, hey, that's what your dream means. And the king's like, hey, I like you because of this. And basically, that's how he gets where he was. So now we're back to this, is how do those stories relate to the boxes I mentioned? We have to get back on topic here. I just mentioned 3 stories. How does that really go over? Well, basically, let's start with Ruth. With Ruth, she's not homeless, but she's extremely poor, and her husband's dead, and the only person that she has is her mother-in-law, who can't do that much, and is basically telling her to go find a new husband. And guess what? That sucks. That is a bad situation. Being widowed and being extremely poor, so much so that you have to glean scraps out of someone's farm, not great. But she makes do with it. She became better. Now she has a husband. She's the Boaz. I'm not sure if he was a noble, but he was pretty rich, seeing as he owns a good chunk of land. And land mattered a lot, especially for farming. So, through using God for that, her box became better. She went from a box of nails to a very joyful box where she lives happily ever after. Sorry, I said that a second time. So the next one here is Esther. Esther was going to have her entire nation killed. She was going to have everybody that she used to know just murdered because Haman didn't like them. Um, Even going up to the king, she risked her life. The queen isn't just allowed to walk up to the king. The king had to just, I guess, pardon her on spot. And she goes up and does that. She basically barges into the king's throne room and says, "Hey, can you do this?" And because of God and because of what she's done, the king pardons her. And that's what happened next. Is she went from having the chance of having her entire nation killed to becoming pretty much the second highest person in the entire nation. Not really, because queen and king aren't like equal positions in that situation. But yeah, she's one of the royals. She's has one of the most money in the entire nation. It's going good for her. And with Daniel, is he went from someone whose nation was just conquered, not going to be homeless, but was going to basically have nothing, have to work his way from the ground up to, through God's grace and through what he does and how faithful he is, he goes from his box of nails to just a box of joy. Now he's up in the nation. He has it great. And his box was less linear, where he just kept on being put in suckier and suckier situations where I'm pretty sure he was like he was gonna be put in prison if he didn't translate a dream in like 3 days. The lion's den, just nail box after nail box after nail box. He goes through it. He takes the hits, and God makes him better for it. And though I only mentioned these three, this situation is throughout the entire Bible of just the boxes. And basically how it works here is that you don't fight the box. If throughout none of these stories, they got better, but they didn't like leave. Like Ruth could have just gone to the city, but she didn't. She stayed with Naomi, and she was faithful to Naomi's God, which happens to be our God. Esther, she could have been complacent because they didn't know she was Jewish, so she could have let her entire people be killed, and she probably would have been fine. Probably nothing would have happened to her. She could have just stayed in the kingdom, not risked her life to face the king, but she didn't. She was faithful to God and said, I know I need to do this. So she didn't fight the box. She didn't try to fight what was going bad against her and just escape and leave. She took other means. And though it does kind of seem like fighting the box, like it's like, hey, you're still kind of like forcefully changing the situation, I hope you can understand what I mean. And I mean, for Daniel, there were so many chances that he could have taken to just be like, I'll listen to what the king says. I mean, God knows I'm still faithful to him, but he doesn't. And he doesn't forcefully fight back against the box. Like, he just took the king's punishment, and for the lion's den, for the food, he just said, hey, here's another solution. We can work this out. We can figure this out. He could have done so many things. Like, he could have just eaten the food. He could have just worshipped the king. There were so many things through his story that he could have just done, but he didn't, and he was better for it. And this story applies to many people. Look at Jesus. He could have came in and easily wiped out the entire Roman Empire, saved, I guess, quote unquote, saved all Jewish people, like made all their lives better, done all these other things, but he didn't. Like the allegory for the city, where he comes in where most people, I guess, face him or know him from, is walking to the city on a donkey, where they thought he was going to be a conqueror. They thought he was going to come in and break the box. They thought he was going to just destroy this box for them, but he didn't, because he doesn't fight the box. And look at Job, where his entire family is killed. Everything he owns, he's covered in boils. He is sick. He is dying on death's door, but because he believes in God and he doesn't fight the box, he's better for it. Now he has thricefold for everything. And you can look at this same archetype, this same story, and put it on almost every character in the Bible, and they will follow it, where none of them fight the box. And what does fighting the box look like in your life? Well, let's say you're being bullied. Do you want to fight the bullies back? Want to annoy them until they stop? Or do you just want to sit down, cry in the fetal position because there's nothing you can do? Well, those don't seem like great options. And if you, in a way of fighting the box, would just to be not going to school. But I wouldn't say that those are exactly the best options. Those don't seem like what God would want someone to do. And though maybe you truly believe God is calling you to that, then to each their own. But I would wager to say that God doesn't want that. Because God doesn't want you to fight the box. He wants you to let him in. Because what fighting the box looks like is putting your hands into the walls of nails and just piercing it and pushing the nails out. Because at least the nails won't be there. But now you have a box of holes. Now people can see you in your shame, in your pain, in your bloody state. Nails, holes in your hands and in your arms and all around you. And when it gets cold, now you're colder too. The cold air is just flowing in. Well, what does it look like for God? Or not for God, but letting God in. Well, when you let God in, that's learning to open up the top. And when God comes in, he systematically removes every single nail. And it won't happen at once. He's not just going to make all those nails disappear. He's not going to snap and they're going to go away. But he's going to take every nail one by one until now your box is warm. Now no one sees you even if you're hurting. Even though that could be bad. Some people you would want to see you. But now you have a box of joy because you trusted in God. And basically what this sums down to is what I thought of last night. Was basically you can't change the world in a day, so change your approach. You're not going to snap and you're not going to be bullied anymore. If you have a bad situation at home, you're not just going to get rid of any abuse or any trauma that you have. You can't just snap and have it go away. So you have to change how you see things. One thing that I notice is in my questions that I have for you guys is basically, do you want the box to get better? Some people don't. Some people are complacent to the box. Sometimes the nails, at least you're going to be warm. At least there's not any holes in your box, right? So it's not going to be that bad. I can live. Some people are complacent and they don't want the box to get better. And that's something that I would have you guys pray about is, do you want the box to get better? Do you want your life and your situations to be better? The next thing is, how do you let God in? Because I can't answer that for you. Some people, praying doesn't work as well for them. Reading the Bible just doesn't really stick. And sometimes you just don't have access to things. Even though all the people that will probably be reading this have access to it, there are many people out there that don't have access or don't really try, or it doesn't work for them. So how do you let God in? That's something that you should pray about and answer, and have God let you know, how do you let God in? Because you don't just say, hey God, take me away. That's not going to be extremely effective. So learn how you let God in. And the last question that is sort of off topic, I'm going to do a wider thing before I answer the question, is basically I have been saying boxes as locations, whether it be home or be school or any other place. That's how I like to think of it, is locations. But your life is a box. Your life is full of things that you don't control that just happen to you, that are just pitter-pattering you. And what this can do, and what can be this could be a bad box, is that, do you love yourself? Because not loving yourself is a bad box. Because even if if other locations are good, maybe your home is pretty nice, maybe you have warm blankets at your house and that's a good box, well, the nails from the outside are going to start sticking in. Because even though it's a good box, your whole life can feel like a bad box. And in my opinion, or at least from what I can tell, no one should really be thinking that way. That their life, maybe not their life is bad, but that they don't love themselves. Is you should love yourself. I love myself, at least I think I do, and there is ways you can quantify it, saying, I have a lot of money, so I'm great, I love myself. I have a lot of friends, I'm great, I love myself. I'm doing well in school, I'm great, I love myself. And I don't think you should be attached to those things. I think you should love yourself the way that God loves you, unconditionally. Because even though you may lie, you may cheat, you may steal, you may do these sins, that doesn't mean that you suck. That doesn't mean you're bad. That means you made a mistake and you should ask for forgiveness. You should say, hey God, I messed up here. Can you help me with this? And through that process, you should learn to love yourself. because there's a lot of people that don't, and I don't want you to be one. So that's the end. For anyone that doesn't care about exposition, basically, now's the end. Pause the video, whatever you want to do. But now I'm gonna say basically why. Why did I think of this? Where did this come from in my mind? Well, first I thought of one of the major criticisms of the Bible is that it's sexist. Is that like there's no women, it's all stories about men. And that is kind of valid in certain situations. There's only 2 books of the Bible that are basically solely about women, and those are the 2 I mentioned here, which are Ruth and Esther. Every other one, and there are stories of women, like Mary is the mother of Jesus, one of the most important women of all time. Like, of course, like that's crazy. That's like that's not me. I'm not Mary, but that's a big thing. And there are so many other stories that show that like the Bible isn't sexist, but many people think that way. So I thought of like, what is better than to show off the 2 books of the Bible, or at least look at it, like see why. And then I noticed a pattern between Ruth and Esther, which is the boxes that I mentioned, is that it starts off really sucky for them. It is much more linear, where their life starts off pretty poor, and over time it gets better for them. And then I thought of Daniel. Is after I found that, I was like, there was one of the messages earlier in the week, I'm pretty sure a few weeks before I thought of this, that was basically about Daniel. And Daniel really stuck out to me because his wasn't as linear, but he had constant boxes of nails, constant situations, locations, places, times in his life where it was boxes of nails. And now he's immortalized with a box of good. He did so much in good for God in that time. So that's where I thought of all of it. So that's in the exposition. That was just why I thought of this. Why I say this is basically, well, like my final question is like, do you love yourself? That was one of the big things that stuck out to me. Is I need to ask this because there's so many people that struggle with that. And then also just the noticing patterns in the Bible, like over everything, where it's like the entire story of the Bible is you don't fight the box, you don't fight the man, you don't go against the government, but you also aren't complacent, where you have to trust and you have to move forward and you have to work. So that is the end. See ya.